Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, RFK Refugees podcast. Ted here, Jon here. We are back for another live show talking DC United, Washington Spirit, Loudoun United, and of course the U.S. men's and women's national teams. Jon, how are you doing, my friend? How was your weekend?
Is it Monday? It's Monday.
It is Monday. We are doing a show. It is Monday.
Yeah, that is the only marker of time that I have that actually stays constant. My weekend was fine. I again watched so much soccer.
Yes, and we are now entering March. Remember, like around this time last year, I'm pretty sure. So if we go based on the fact that last year was a leap year, at this time last year we had watched the home opener. We were on our way back from DC. And we had just done a live show. So we have come full circle in about a year. I'm using that because March 1st, technically, that March, was February 29th, which was a leap year. Doesn't exist in this time frame. So we got to go based on that. That's crazy to think about. We've gone a full year. It feels longer. Yes. But yes, here it is.
That was a good time and one that we are for sure going to replicate in some way and some time. But I can't believe it was a year ago today.
Yep, got to get through the pandemic, and we got soccer coming up. So we got soccer to talk about. We got some bad news, some good news, some really bad news. I think we're going to discuss. It's kind of all over the spectrum this week. But let's jump right into this. Jon, you wanted to go ahead and announce, I think, right off the top.
I did.
Our winner of our Spirit raffle. Thank you so much to everybody that entered and took part in that. We hope you enjoyed the interview, and you want to announce the winner.
Yeah, I wish we had 100 jerseys to give away to everyone that filled it out. But Lauren from Kentucky, congrats on winning your free Washington Spirit jersey. We have been in contact. We will make sure that happens for you pretty soon. So we're going to be doing more of these. We've already got some on deck. So keep posted. They're all going to tell you to follow us somewhere and do something. So make sure that you're listening, and then you can win free stuff.
It's a participation award. It is. You have to participate.
It is the green ribbon of things. I don't know if it was. I don't know. Were your participation ribbons always green, like in field day?
I guess they were green. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It's been a while.
Blue first place, red second place.
Green. Those are the things that ruined us, right? That's what everybody says.
I'm ruined from that. For sure.
Oh yeah, scarred mentally.
I'm
100%. All right, let's get into. We got the good news out, so now we gotta taper it with some bad. Dealing more with MLS. The main Sacramento investor, Ron Burkle, has pulled out. He was apparently worth $1.5 billion, but has informed the league that he no longer wishes to go forward as an owner. So. It's kind of gone back and forth. I guess it's too soon to really know. Is this, in theory, there are other people who could fly in and say, yep, I'll take up the mantle. You're not going to find a sports franchise that has, I guess, a turnkey stadium and everything. But for all intents and purposes, the 30th MLS team is up in the air. The NWSL franchise is up in the air. A lot. It's sad and disappointing, I think, for fans of Sacramento. Jon, you lived in the area. You have that's kind of your second home. So I'll let you take over from here.
I lived there as the first time Don Garber came to Sacramento and said, we're going to give you guys a team. And that was years and years ago now. A few bits of information. So Ron Burkle has a lot of money. Ron Burkle's money comes from, I believe, according to his Wikipedia page, mergers and acquisitions of supermarkets. So supermarkets doing pretty well during the pandemic. I think generally that's the case. Did so well that I believe he bought Neverland a few years ago as a real estate transaction, and also was a family friend of Michael Jackson. Neither here nor there. The mayor of Sacramento, Mayor Steinberg, has been doing a lot to try to make this a reality. I think he sees it as his sort of crowning achievement. The mayor before that, Kevin Johnson, who has a whole bunch of troubled stuff in his past, if you want to Google him, other than his NBA career, got the Sacramento Kings their new stadium with state money. Darryl Steinberg was trying to get this new stadium built in the rail yards, which is outside of the main downtown core, but it is right now, if you look at it, it is blocks and blocks and blocks of flat earth that there's nothing there. It's like block, like 8 blocks. If you look It's all dirt. It's all been paved out. It's a super fun site. So that's a problem. So they've got to clean it up. It's ready to go. It just, doesn't look very good. So
we would know all about stadiums built in places that
right
are very much under construction and everything like that.
The good thing though, if it does get built, if you've seen the renderings, and I think talking about stadium renderings is triggering to DC United fans, but it's really, really beautiful, open air. It gets hot as hell there in the summer, so it was intended to be very open. It's right off the river. It will be great. I don't think it's done. I think that Sacramento is an hour and a half from a whole bunch of rich people in Silicon Valley. It's literally, if we're talking about a $200 million, expansion fee that has to get paid, that could be found. I don't know what they're doing right now. I know that Steinberg will probably bend over backwards to make this thing get over the edge. I don't know if it's like tax abatements or whatever to make it happen, but it's unfortunate. For the Republic, they've been this close to an MLS franchise since I've been there. I put down season ticket deposit when I was there to tell you how close and how long this has been. But I think that the franchise is sort of stuck in the mud because they've been in this in between for quite some time. They're no longer setting records for attendance. They're no longer at the top of the league every year like they were when they started. There have been like 6 head coaches in 5 years. It's a long time since Preki was the manager. And that's a great saga if you ever want to look on what happened to Preki or where's Preki. That was a wild little bit of time. But you alluded to it. The whole pitch there was like, we'll have a stadium, we'll do an NWSL franchise almost as an afterthought. And NWSL were like, yep, we'll take it. Let's do it. Let's have another team. But, they're not even really acknowledging that component of this. I think that they're trying to salvage the MLS thing right now. They still have a while because I believe were they 22 or 23 entrants? Do you know that? They were intended to be?
I think they were 2024. I want to say. I know they were towards the end.
St. Louis, I think, was after them.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look. I know they pushed everything back a year. It's been a little bit up in the air. I was going to look to see.
It's still possible for this to get done. It's not. It wasn't happening next year, so there's still a chance. It's just a bad start. I think it was. They were late to pay. They had money due last month. It didn't get there. The league was like, where's your money, bro? We're assessing a late fee to your $200 million. But anyway, that's a heartbreaker for the fans out there. I don't think there's any Sacramento Republic fans who listen to the show. If there are, hello, hi. But it's a bummer for the league too. I think that one of the filibuster guys was talking on Twitter, like, is this the beginning of the bubble bursting on expansion? Is the fact that they are picking groups in areas where it's not so sure that the money's there. I think the pandemic is sort of an exigent circumstance, and we can't really judge that too much. I think it just sort of feels like we've expanded too fast, too quickly, but I think the pandemic really just sort of, it's hard to draw conclusions, I would say, from this last couple of years.
I will say, I feel like a lot has sort of made up as sort of a bubble bursting in MLS. I don't know if I see that. I could see things slowing down. I think there are other franchises that will come about. I think the league is going to say, okay, we're not making a decision on this until maybe the end of 2022. Maybe they push it out even further as sort of we get out of this pandemic, the economy starts to pick back up, so to speak, and there are more owners that suddenly say, hey, I'll give some money towards this league. I think that's what we're probably, in my opinion, more likely to see is that they're going to take a step back. Unless someone comes in tomorrow and says, yeah, I'll take this mantle. I'll be the guy to, take the Sacramento Republic. I will, finish the financing on the stadium. Let's go. But if that doesn't come to fruition, it's going to be a little bit of a wait, I think, before MLS jumps in again.
There are loyal fans of the Sacramento Kings, and they are horrible. They are historically horrible. They have the longest stretch of not appearing in the playoffs since they were jobbed by the NBA against the Lakers. Again, no Sacramento fans listening, but if they were, they would be gripping a stress ball as I talk about that. I say that to say, if they make this happen, it's a money machine. they will come and go to these games. The fans are absolutely rabid for top level soccer. So listen, Meg Whitman originally was an investor for like a week. Someone that go shake Tim Cook's pockets, just like hold him by his ankles and shake him, and $200 million will fall out, and then someone could be the owner. Let's just make it happen.
And I think the most important thing to remember is, MLS, if you want to get in on a sports franchise, you're not going to find anything cheaper than MLS right now. And I think that is a large part of the draw, that we've seen with trying to get owners into this league. It's kind of like getting on something right. I mean, maybe we're not on the ground floor anymore, but we're on maybe floor one of that. And so I think that's what you could still see here. And I think a lot of people said, well, how we got 5 teams in California, why do we need 5?
It's a lot of people in California.
Put teams wherever there are going to be fans. And Sacramento has shown they were one of the first teams when they came into USL that sort of began this revolution of USL championship level teams, second division, third division teams, getting fan bases, getting into the community and showing that they could support the game and sort of building up. And they were kind of the ones where it was like, maybe they become a new Rochester. Maybe they kind of, Rochester was in talks in the late 90s about being an MLS team, huge amounts of support. And then it all dwindled and now they are no more. They are in dormant. They are no real plans, I guess, to return, or concrete plans that I've heard. So I was worried Sacramento was going to kind of go that route, MLS, and it was going to be kind of a real test. What happens once the MLS dream is over, and what happens to these teams? Do investors start to pull out? Do teams start to die? I abide by the Jason Davis philosophy that the most important thing that a second division, lower division club, or any soccer club in America can do is exist and survive. That is the most important thing, because if it doesn't, then you've got nothing. And we've seen it with North Carolina dropping down. We've seen it with my team, Richmond, dropping down. If that's what you got to do to stay afloat, you do it, because you want your teams to be there. You want that history. You want that generational, kids growing up with their parents watching the game and then their kids growing up. That's what you want in this game. That's how we're going to, slow growth this thing and get the sport bigger. So
Ryan Johnson on YouTube says, I feel so bad for Sacramento fans, much more deserving of an MLS team than Austin or Charlotte. Austin, certainly, that's ask a Columbus fan about that one. I mean, obviously they worked out for them. They won MLS Cup and they got their team back and they're building a stadium. So they're probably not sweating it too hard. Charlotte, they're selling seat licenses in Charlotte for a team that has, that's going to be really interesting to watch. If we're, to bring back the bubble talk, if there is a bubble, I would look at places that did not have a sustained successful USL franchise to really prove as a proof of concept that soccer can be supported there. It's going to be played in a giant football stadium. I mean, it's something to watch. Watch that franchise this when they come to the league.
They're trying to be Atlanta without the understanding of what made Atlanta successful, which was to get in the door. It wasn't expensive. It was fairly cheap to get into the door. And they proved. And so I think really what's going to come with Charlotte is, okay, you're selling expensive tickets. You got to make it worthwhile to these people then, go out and sign your Amarodes, go out and sign your big name players. If Atlanta hadn't been good their first season, if they hadn't made the playoffs, it would have dried up very quickly. So that's always the test. You can sell all the expensive tickets. You can play in a football stadium, but if you're going to do something like that, you got to then put a product on the field that people want to come out and watch. But yeah, MLS expansion is always afoot. And speaking of things that are afoot, we got DC United signings. We got players that are actually coming in. We start with the first official. It was actually, I think, just made official right as we were coming on air. Giovanni Bolivar, 19-year-old Venezuelan player, U20 player for Venezuela. This looks like a loan.
Yes, it is a loan.
It looks like he's a smaller player, not necessarily a target forward. We've done this before, John. You wanted to say what you wanted to say. What player does this remind you of?
I instantly thought of Bruno Miranda when, as far as I thought, like what my expectations were of a player. Bruno Miranda, a U20, I believe at the time, player in Bolivia, I believe, if I'm correct. Did not feature much for DC United. I also thought when I thought height, I thought Frank O'Neill, and then I remember that Frank O'Neill was 5'4", so relative giant compared to Frank O'Neill. 4 goals in 18 matches in 2020. Just scored, I believe, in a U20 match a couple days ago. I think that there's a possibility that we spotted this player in our pursuit for Dar Luis Paz, who is signed to a contract for Loud United, who's also a U20 player for Venezuela. Anyway, I want to make sure that we have the source here. Mario Sanchez on Twitter was where we got confirmation on this. I don't know how this happened, but we get tagged now on a lot of South American rumors and player signings. So like the account is just like, I get a million notifications for a tweet that we did not write that we are in Spanish. I'm like, all right, well, I guess we should put the Google Translate on this and figure out what's going on.
Hit that translate tweet button. That's where that comes in handy. Or in my case, I just borrow my wife who speaks fluent Spanish if there's any sort of translation that's needed. But
what do we feel that this is? We'll talk about
this is, if you want to know what I think this is a almost a quintessential Dave Casper type move, international signing. Low risk. It's a loan. Doesn't work out. He goes back. No problems made. I do think maybe this is the interesting parts come in is if he does end up being good enough, he's a U22, the under 22 initiative player. They can spend as much money as they want on that transfer. They do not need to split up that transfer fee at all. And I do wonder, this under 22 initiative, we think about a player like Emil Assad, who we got on a loan, and how that whole thing fell apart. And I do think this is maybe in response to that. We're grabbing more and more players from South America, and deals falling apart because of roster rules, and teams have to sort of restructure certain deals to payments to these clubs, and these clubs not understanding, I think, is pushing this a little bit. Because if we go back to when Emil Assad was his age, he would have been that player. But I think this is kind of we're bringing him in on loan. If he ends up showing well, playing well, he's going to have national team teammate in Junior Moreno. He's going to have, people he knows. It's certainly attack wise. It's very South American style attack that DC's building here, maybe with besides Julian Gressel and Paul Arriola. So, it's a chance for him to be, and if he's successful, great. He's a U22 signing. You can pay whatever you want for that transfer fee. Probably even if he lights up the league, I doubt he's going to eclipse $612,000 on the salary.
No.
And so then he costs you. So if you pay $300,000 a year for him, if he plays well, he only costs you $150 on your cap. And that transfer fee doesn't even come into it. So I think that's sort of the thinking behind this move. It's a low risk, high reward move, which we've seen Dave Casper do a lot.
And historically, that has been due to financial constraints.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also, again, this year that is the watchword. DC United staff also flew to Bulgaria this last weekend to watch and talk to Nigel Roberta, who played 90 minutes against CSKA 1948, another team in Bulgaria. Did not score. I think that if you look at the players that we're pursuing and have signed, these are a lot of these are high ceiling players, or they're not likely to cost us a substantial outlay. Edison Flores cost, I think, was it $4.5 or $5.5 million last year, something like that.
It was $5. I mean, it broke a transfer record,
right?
As far as that goes.
So that was the gamble was last year, I think, for that, and then again next year. I think in every interview I've seen of Ernam Losada, he's basically like, I want to tamp down expectations for this year. I would like you to know and understand that this is an adjustment year. We're not making big signings. So the good thing to me is that I don't, at least not yet, and he might have to cast these signings as big signings, as marquee signings, because they're not. And that's okay. I mean, we're not maybe not in a position to do that, but like, I like the honesty of saying, like, we're seeing what we're about. Our players on the team are probably better if they're performing at their best than maybe the players we're bringing in.
This is a team, I think, that is doing what I think in this offseason, what we expected, which was they are banking on 2020 being, they're giving a mulligan to Edison Flores. They're giving a mulligan to Ola Kamara. They're giving a mulligan to Jordi Reyna. They're like, all right, 2021's, as normal as it has been as far as the season goes. Let's, almost everybody gets a clean slate. Everybody's, it's wipe the slate clean. All right, let's start new. We got a new coach, new identity. We have talent that we spent a considerable amount of money on. Julian Gressel, Edison Flores, those types of players. We even brought in Yordi Reyna midseason, which is still not, he's not a cheap, he's, I guess, cheap in comparison to some of the DPs out there, but he's not a cheap player. And so I think they're thinking from an attack, they're looking at guys that can push other players. Nigel Roberto seems like a guy they talked about getting a player that can push Ola Kamara. That's your player that's going to maybe not start day one, but maybe he's a guy who, steps up and pushes maybe Ola Kamara a little bit. Here's a guy, Joni, seems like Giovanni Bolivar, and it seems like a guy who is maybe going to push Yordi Reyna a little bit. Maybe he's more of a withdrawn forward. Yordi Reyna kind of plays that role, or even Edison Flores and some other guys. So I think this is all about bolstering depth and trying to find depth. And I hope is I think the biggest problem is DC has made these signings, and we had a coach in Ben Olsen who just did not trust them. Could not trust these players. Maybe they weren't good enough, but we never really got to see. Bruno Miranda, I think, is a good thing. We saw maybe a little bit. We saw maybe some flashes of what maybe DC saw in him, but we didn't see him enough. And so I'll be curious to see what type of player, what type of coach we get out of Lasada as far as that goes. So
I'm going to put on my Ben Olsen defender hat. I look at how players do when they leave to be evidenced of what if the coach had a bad evaluation of talent. Bruno Miranda plays on a second division in South America right now. I don't know if it's in Bolivia. I think about like Rafael Augusto playing in Vietnam. I think now I had a little bit of time on my hands, and I went on Instagram on the show account and followed a bunch of former DC United players, trying to see where they're playing, if they're playing at all. So I don't know if he was a miss, and I don't know if it, like Rafael Gladiator, I don't think is lighting the leagues on fire. So anyway, I think that's not as important. I think the conclusion that we've made here is that this is about depth, and the hope is that with actually good depth, these players feel a pressure to perform, and that they do, instead of just sort of everyone, all the levels go down for everyone. I think that maybe Nigel Roberta is a better Gelman Rivas,
better Gelman, and maybe a better Eric Sorga. Do I want to drop that on anyone right now? Who knows? I don't know how the Bulgarian league rates the Estonian league. Someone help me out with that. Yeah, someone with some football manager knowledge go in and take that. But
yes. So other moves that are happening this time going out the door. Michael Edwards, the 20-year-old former DC United Academy product, is going to Colorado for undisclosed amounts of allocation money. They've got
to release that at some point. Maybe they haven't made it official yet, but they're going to allocation. You can't hide allocation money anymore. The rights are now, I mean, my guess is maybe 100, at most 100,000 allocation. I'll be surprised if it's more than that. DC did a good bit of business, I guess.
Yeah. I think Eric Williamson was probably in that range, 150, 200. So Michael Edwards is playing in Wolfsburg 2, or was playing in Wolfsburg 2 since 2019. He's played 6 matches this season. I'm hoping that, I brought up Eric Williamson as sort of like the specter of this last move, where we had a player who would have come back potentially, or maybe didn't like our contract offer. I know that we tried to make an offer to Edwards as he left. So same story there. He decided to come back. If you look at Colorado, it does not appear that he would step right in to the rotation immediately. But then again, you would have thought that about Eric Williamson too when you looked at the midfield in Portland. And now look at him. He's a penciled-in starter. He's making national teams. So you never know. Good for him. Good to secure. I think there's only so long in which you can play in Wolfsburg 2. I feel like you gotta move on at some point, and good for him. I'm glad we got money out of a player that didn't want to play here.
Yeah. And the Lucho FCC deal has apparently been agreed. It's pending a transfer. Lucho's time at Atlas, I think, will be is disappointing to say the least. I think we kind of anytime Atlas is on, I watched him, and he is he seems lost. He does not look like the same sort of motivation. Who knows what that means. So I guess the question is, can they get a deal? Can FC Cincinnati get a deal? So DC can get that $500K in allocation money, which is my guess. It's probably around that amount.
Atlas would like to be rid of his $2 million a year contract. If you watch him, I think the problem for him is that he is not a focal point on that team.
Yeah.
And he often looks like a bystander because the play does not, because he's not the central hub of play. I feel like he drifts, and he drifted at DC United, but I think he drifted for a different reason there. I think he got drifted there because he was targeted and marked out of the game, and they got physical with him. And then he just was tired of getting kicked around all the time. And then after that, he sulked for different reasons. So now I don't think any of those things are at play. I think it's just maybe a bad fit for the player he is now. I think maybe he needs to be somewhere where he has the ball and everyone's looking for him. Maybe FC Cincinnati is the spot. I don't know. I know that I watched Atlas on the weekend, and he got a yellow card for diving in the first 15 minutes in the box, which is unfortunate and not really a good look. I feel like when you're a player that does that, who is not getting a lot of time and is looking at a transfer, that kind of stuff happens. I feel like it's not a great look, and it's also sort of very much in line with sort of late stage Lucho at whatever club he's at, where he doesn't want to be anymore.
Yeah. I know you are of the opinion. You have talked a lot about your sentimentality as far as, I hope I said that right.
You got it.
As far as players coming back to DC. I have none of those traits. I look at Perry Kitchen and I see a less good Russell Canouse, because Perry Kitchen never developed an ability to sort of play the ball forward. He was always defend, pass to the left, pass to the right, pass backwards, never really developed. He had some moments, but not enough. So
they both have about the same amount of starts for the U.S. national team.
Yeah. Russell Canouse and
they're January camp players for sure.
But Russell Canouse has a more of an ability, I guess, to play the ball forward, and he's shown it in some games. By the way, I think we're going to go ahead and open the phone lines. I think we got a new number. Sorry. Right up there. Yeah. I thought you wanted to say something, John. I apologize.
No, I was just gesturing and making very confusing gesture. New number. I'm sure you all had the old number saved, so make sure to update your phones.
Yes.
And your contact numbers. But other DC United player news, I think, is probably the last. Well, there's two bits. One more. We're doing going in, going out, switching back and forth. Brendan Hines-Ike, his loan is finalized. I don't know if that happened on the last show. 1 year loan, option to buy. I think we talked about him, but Orebro in Sweden and then Courtrai in Belgium for the last 5 years, ready to get home. Played a nugget that I thought was interesting in an interview that he was doing when he was playing in college. He played youth soccer with the Chivas USA Academy in Los Angeles as a forward. So anytime I can mention Chivas USA ever, I'm going to do it. Man,
he's going to be like, soon we're man, that's like a blast from the past. Talk about like, you want to talk about bad expansion teams? Chivas USA. Love you, Elac, but Chivas
I want a
USA.
Chivas USA jersey. I got to look on eBay and see if there's but there's got to be somewhere. I want an Ante Razov Chivas USA jersey.
Man, we're going to I am looking forward to the Chivas USA 30 for 30. I feel like that will come in like 10, 15 years at some point. We'll get to watch that, and I will eat that up. But I think this is a guy, again, people have been looking for a guy that can compete with Fred Brilliant. This might be the guy. You may be looking at, if this team sticks with a 4-back system, you may be looking at, Steve Birnbaum and Brendan Hines-Ike as that back pair. You may be looking at Fred Brilliant still out there. If there's a 3-back system, maybe this is the season that changes. So we'll see. It's a good move. I think it bolsters that center back. I think they get a player who can be a starting caliber center back, and that's what they're looking for. So,
yep, I think it's of the players that we're looking at, he's the one that's going to start. Very, very likely, more than the other players that we just were talking about. More DC United player news of the past, and I think probably the present and the future, or not present, but the future. Paul Arriola, again, a late sub for Swansea in another loss. In an interview with Goff, he very much sounded like a guy who really wishes he was playing, wishes he had a chance, but also is very not resigned to the fact, but understanding that it's very likely he's back in May. I don't know who was on the DC United Discord that was talking and saying, even if you want to sell Paul, it's probably best for him to come back and get a full year of play with MLS and in the national team before you look to sell him again in the January window, which I think is probably true. He's coming off an injury. This is the lowest value you could possibly have, and you're selling him to yourself, which means you're not gonna bilk yourself for money. And Swansea does not look like they're gonna. I mean, there's a good chance they're still going to make the playoffs, but not getting automatic promotion, I think, for sure at this point.
And the way you have to look at it is you have an opportunity you're getting games, you're getting matches, you're going to be coming into May, you are going to have maybe some more, game fitness experience at your back. So you can, in theory, then hit MLS on the ground running and put yourself in a position where another team could come in. You're sort of getting yourself in the shop window, and maybe it doesn't look, maybe other teams are kind of passing you by. Then you go back to MLS, you start to light it up. And then next season it comes back, the winter window rolls around and Swansea or some other clubs are like, no, yeah, we want you. Let's make a deal. However you want. So I think that's kind of the thinking behind this. I wish him well. I hope he does well. I would really like for him to do well and to be sold. I think that I would like to see DC make good. Any players that want to go to Europe, I want DC to be the one to sell them. And I think that's the philosophy I feel DC should adopt. And I've said that many times. So let's talk to your guy. You got an article from The Guardian that you pulled up.
I did. I think it's interesting. It's a brief thing. It's not really too much to talk about, but there have been a number of articles in the last couple weeks. Charlie Boehm wrote one about the player acquisition director, I think, in Vancouver, who is basically a stats guy. This article talked about how that's going on more and more. I didn't know this already. It might have already been publicly known information, and if it is, I apologize. But Dan Altman, who is a former New York Times columnist, writes about economics, really, really well published. I was looking at his CV. He's very, very accomplished. Decided he got a little bored and decided he was going to get into soccer analytics and advise certain teams, including DC United and Swansea City. And he was the guy that convinced the team to sign Wayne Rooney, or probably one of the people that I'm sure that the business folks were like, yeah, you should do that. But he was looking at it from the player skill, sort of like he built a model that was able to really easily or predictably transfer a player from the Premier League to MLS and see how they do. So he's also the guy who started Smarter Scout. So if you're familiar with that website, that is his baby. I think it's interesting to see. I think that not every team is going to have the financial backing or financial capabilities to be the big spenders. So I think a lot of MLS teams are going to Billy Bean this thing and still try to. The global market is so wide that you can still find advantages. Not maybe as easy as you could in 96 to 99, where basically it was like, we've heard of this place called South America, and we're going to sign these players that you've never heard of or seen, and watch how good they are. It's a little bit different now because everyone has streaming packages, but I think that they're still going to try to do this, try to figure out a way to use data to more predictably figure out who could come and cut it and who is maybe not a good fit.
And there's a lot of this going on too. When you see that number of, allocation money for a player or trade in draft picks, there actually are data people that will look at a player and they will come up and I listen to it. If you go check out MLS Assist, part of the Total Soccer Show network. They have a whole show where they talk to a guy that's his job is to sort of figure out how much is this player worth in allocation money, MLS allocation money, and use it. So it's an interesting thing. It's something I think we on the show are trying to get a little more into. That's notoriously been a black hole, I guess, for us on this show. But
we read the survey responses, guys. We got it. Yes, we're gonna make an attempt to do a better job, and we're gonna use some data to kind of help us out here. But
I guess that's sort of the interesting thing is, as an MLS club, it's what DC I think was the Moneyball team before Moneyball existed. You looked at what they did in 96, 97, 99. All these teams were going after guys like Carlos Valderrama, and they went and grabbed two Bolivians, Marco Echeverri and Jaime Moreno, who were very highly touted, but they were not, known quantities or really like big star names. They were not the ones gracing the cover of the 96 MLS season until they started winning. So, I mean, this is a club that pioneered that sort of, shopping on the bargain bin and finding real value. And they did it twice. They did it 96 to 99, and then 2004 to 2007 with Christian Gomez and bringing back Jaime again. So,
and then they didn't after that.
and then money sort of became, it went from finding the $200,000 player to the $1 million player, $2 million player. And we all know what happened there, but it's representative of the fact of that. Despite all the increased, spending and money in the league, we watched LA spend a whole lot of money to bring in Chicharito and completely flop.
He says it's going to be much better this year, though.
He does, and I believe him. I believe in him. I do. But I think it's sort of the idea of if someone can use analytics, and again, and I think the important thing too is that the guy on the MLS assist show pointed out, he said, there's still a lot you don't know. I mean, you don't know how a player is going to take to being in the US. You don't know what's going to happen. I think you look at Wayne Rooney was great. And then, I think there were some outside of soccer personal issues that I think affected him in 2019, and the whole failed transfer of Lucho affected Lucho in 2019. So
I'm sure that was in this guy's,
oh yeah.
I'm sure unhappy wife was in his, calculations for how he'd perform. I'm sure.
I'm sure it was. And the drunken public incident at Dulles Airport, that was right there as like the X value.
That was that was a 0.1 increase on expected goals.
Yes. Anyway, so yeah, interesting stuff. I really hope we start to see more of that curtain pulling sort of to the side and learning more about that. So Washington Spirit allocated players, Andy, Emily, and Kelly. So 3 U.S. national team players. Kind of interesting because I guess Andy Sullivan, despite not sort of being a regular, still counts. I guess she still has a U.S. soccer contract.
She does. She's still getting that. She's still getting that U.S. bag. So good for her. I think that there are some teams that have none currently. Louisville has none allocated right now. I'm wondering. I don't know enough yet on the NWSL roster rule side to see what that does to the salary cap implications. I think you're just off book. I think you're just off budget fully if you're allocated, which is great. The Spirit arrived in Florida today to start their, I think, 3 weeks of training camp. I think it's a long time. Great for them. I mean, I wish I was in Florida. Even if it was in a hotel, I would take it. I think that they're going to be practicing a lot. I have not heard anything about scrimmages or any sort of schedule from that perspective. I know that Louisville put out they're playing some college teams. They're playing Orlando. So they're a team now just, forming. So obviously playing games is very important to them. The Spirit, however, are for the most part, generally pretty intact with a few new pieces. So I think they're in a much better starting position. And if you heard the interview with Andy Sullivan last week, and if you hadn't, think you should go listen to it. But we talked about how it's all this player movement and sort of, I don't know how to say player power, but like players sort of dictating where they want to go. Crystal Dunn being an example, going from North Carolina to Portland to be, I think her husband lives out there or works maybe for the Timbers. I think it's made it so that it's wide open. Any of these teams, I don't think anymore. And watch, I'm going to, say that the king is dead and North Carolina is no longer the one to beat, and then they're going to win the championship in a walk. But if that doesn't happen, it's pretty much open for any team. And the Spirit have a very strong core. They've made some good additions. We don't yet know how they're going to fit. But if you looked on paper, you would feel pretty confident that if everyone stays healthy and if they're able to finish the chances they're likely to create, that the Spirit have a good chance to win some hardware at this point.
I think what they have done, what I think maybe some other teams maybe would have been afraid to do, which is we are looking this purely from a perspective of what's gonna help us win games. And we look at Rose Lavelle; she's a fantastic talent, but we're having to deal with consistently U.S. Soccer stepping in and saying nope, she can't play. And we're basically, it's a big empty hole in our roster because we're trying to build the team around her. So what do? They say, you know what, we need to, she's going to go. We need to, she's a big draw. She will bring in tickets. She'll bring in people, but you know what? Winning is more important to us. And so we're going to get a value, and we are going to then put it into our roster and get other players. And I think that's kind of what they've done is they've gotten players. I mean, the players they've signed from Japan all are very highly touted. So I'll be curious to see what comes of this team. I think they've kind of taken a core that they sort of built in the Challenge Cup, and now they're gonna, I hope we're gonna see them sort of take flight. I think they surprised a lot of people at that Challenge Cup. I don't think anybody was expecting them to be as good as they were in that game.
It'll be interesting for me to see what the effect at the gate is when they're able to sell an Audi again with no Rose. Rose obviously, her contributions to the team were in question because she was injured a lot. But I think no doubt she was driving ticket sales in a big way. And for all of Kelly O'Hara's skills and Emily Sonnet's abilities, I don't necessarily think that they are going to drive the casuals and that matters when you're running out a big arena like Audi Field. There are some the casuals make up a component of that fan base.
I will be watching, I guess, Trini Rodman is kind of she's the player if she has a breakout season. And it's because of who her father is. And that's unfortunately the way it is that she could generate some interest. She's a player. If she plays well and she gets out there, I think she's somebody who can kind of break through it and sell tickets. I think they sell tickets regardless, but,
17 and 25 is a hard number to hit. It's a hard number to hit. Otherwise, obviously the gate in Boyd's was more down to its location than anything else. But I don't know. We'll see. I hope I'm wrong, and that they win, and that draws out the fans, and they don't have to worry about anything. But it's hard to say without actually living through it. Speaking of Emily Sonnet, and not so much Kelly O'Hara because she got about 20 minutes in the one game she played in the final game. U.S. Women's National Team wins the SheBelievesCup. I don't know if it was ever in doubt. It was not, is the answer.
It was maybe in doubt. Like once they beat Canada and beat Brazil, I mean, it was pretty much, it was a known quantity at that point. I think
I felt good walking in. I felt pretty good walking in. I'm sure you did too, honestly.
Yeah. Fair. I mean, this is the best team in the world. I mean, right. There's no question about it.
So Emily Sonnet had a pretty rough series. I think she didn't play against Canada and played in the other games. She got real torched against Brazil. She came in for Kelly O'Hara in the Argentina game, wasn't really tested in that game as much. Argentina didn't put up much of a fight, unfortunately, going forward for the game and for our evaluation of her. I think that she's coming off of, and Kelly O'Hara played no games in the Challenge Cup, no games in the Fall Challenge or Fall Series. I think she wanted to move, and that was her way of facilitating it, and it worked. I think Emily Sonnet also did not have a full season. Was she playing for Orlando last year? Is that where we got her from?
I can't. Honestly,
I believe that is true. And if you remember, of course, Orlando did not play in the Challenge Cup because of COVID. They did play in the Fall Series and did well, but we'll see. I think that I'm just talking about the spirit implications here. I think Kelly O'Hara is definitely working her way into fitness, and she's got a long time to do that. She's got a whole month before we play a game. So she should be able to do that. I think that Richie is going to be very careful with her minutes and try to keep her healthy to the games that matter at the end of the year. But Emily Sonnet certainly has to perform better than she did against. She's not going to go against Marta every weekend, but she's going to go against Marta when they play Orlando. Like, this is a league that has a lot of those top level international players. So you've got to be ready to go.
Yep. Yeah. So it's, like I said, it's a team that there are probably 20 players on that roster. Andy Sullivan plays for any country in the world. She's a starter. And right now she hasn't been on the roster. So I think that's what we talk about a lot with the U.S. women's team. All right, let's get into. We've touched on some good. We've touched on some bad. Let's get into the really bad. The U.S. Soccer Federation. Now, this isn't necessarily bad. I don't have an opinion. I haven't studied the platforms, I guess, of the U.S. Soccer people running for vice president. But Bill Taylor was elected vice president. That was very, very quickly overshadowed there was a vote to remove the standing policy that you stand for the national anthem. It won with 70% to 20% of the vote. And then one of the, I guess, elected leaders of the Players Council, who represents the Paralympic team, Seth Hahn, decided to make one of the most absolutely disgusting and awful comments you can possibly ever come up with. And I don't think you need us to tell you. I'm not even going to repeat what he said. They were awful comments that should not. You almost wish you had an ability for somebody to just take the mic away from him. It was bad, and the response from the president of U.S. Soccer was almost even worse. It was, well, we need to respect all sides, and then they very quickly came out with a statement that said, no, this is despicable, this is bad, and the Athletes Council voted to remove him. So that part is good, but I think U.S. Soccer, there is a growing trend of incidents like Sethian, like what happened in Orlando with the men's team, of ultra conservative. I think there was a comment about Black Lives Matter audibly heard by fans that provoked response. And there are a lot of people out there. I'm not painting all U.S. soccer fans with a broad brush, but there are fans out there that I've seen. And when we get into World Cup qualifiers, there are very disrespectful comments. And I am concerned because the U.S. national team is still very much a gateway when it comes to other teams in soccer. I mean, 2002 was a moment for me where I started really making soccer my primary sport, watching that team do well in the World Cup. And I am very deeply concerned that I'm seeing a fan base sort of see the U.S. team as sort of a safe space, the ultra nationalistic, waving the flag, and it's becoming that. And I'm very, very worried that there are people out there, there are fans that see, Sethian's comments. There are people within the organization that agree with what he said, or at least agree with some of what he said. And it's an overarching concern that U.S. soccer needs to take seriously, and they need to address it. They can't just kick Seth out of U.S. soccer and think that it's going to solve it. And I am deeply concerned with what's to come. And it's a problem. And if U.S. soccer does not address it, I'm very, very worried about what the future of the team will be, and what the future of the fan base will be. And there will be people that will go to games and they will hear comments and they will say, I'm not doing this anymore. And you're turning people away from the game, and all to placate people who really should not be anywhere near U.S. soccer at all. So that's sort of the overarching story is his comments were bad, but it's becoming a trend, and it's at the very least starting to develop a trend. And that for me is concerning. So that's really all I wanted to say about that. I hope people know that, if you come to U.S. soccer games, you come to MLS games, you are accepted, you are welcome. And it's a very rough, and it's also, coming in with what happened with the national team and the anthem. So there was a lot of bad that sort of went on with U.S. soccer, and I think their management. I don't know if John, I don't know if you have anything you want to add, or.
I do not. I'm glad he got fired. And I'm glad to not have to know any more people on the Players Council and what their political leanings are. That suits me fine. Yeah,
the openness of some of his, and of course his Instagram tweets got his Instagram got leaked, and there's a lot about that. So I guess with that, guys, we're gonna wrap up the show. Twitter.com/RFQrefugees, RFQrefugees.com, Patreon.com/RFQrefugees, Facebook. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. John wants me to push the Instagram. I'm not a big Instagram person, so.
And he belies his relative youth by not being an Instagram person.
Yeah, man. I'm not someone who takes a lot of photos, I guess is the thing. So I'm a big fan of Twitter because I guess that's where soccer grew up. So I'm a big fan. I'm on the Twitter, but Instagram, maybe it kind of passed me by, so to speak. So
it's unfortunate. Well, be on the lookout for the RFK Refugees TikTok where
we'll
make Ted dance or something. I don't know yet. We'll figure it out. But follow us on Instagram because that's what we're going to do our live video before, during, and after games this season. So
yeah,
if for no other reason, do that. Make sure you fill out the survey, and that's probably all the things that we've got for you for now. But don't worry, we'll have more things for you to do. We'll always come up with more work and homework for our great listeners to do.
Yep. And I guess with that, we will go ahead and wrap up the show. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you guys next week. Vamos.